Hi, my name is John Mancini. I'm president of Content Results, and I'm contracted to do the Industry Watch research program. And so I wanted to welcome you to this little snapshot of our new ebook focused on process automation and RPA. We call this the Ultimate Guide to Improving Your Business Processes. And you'll see a download link, and I would urge you to download the full ebook, and you'll get a real full sense of some of the issues that I'll quickly go through in this brief presentation. So the first thing I think we wanted to do with this research report is think a little bit, take a step back and think a little bit about why you should care about process automation. Why is it important? What are some of the issues that you ought to be thinking about along the way? And so this data point is particularly interesting, I think, when you think about this, is we asked the question, identify the kinds of processes that would yield the greatest benefit from an increased investment in automation. And those of us in the content management space have talked about content silos for a long time. And you can see in the response to this question a realization that there's an intersection there, that processes that cross departments, that cross systems, organizational boundaries, in other words, that operate within information silos, those are the most problematic places when it comes to automation. And those are the places that organizations really want to focus on as they think about process automation. We also asked this question, which of the following reasons for undertaking process change is the most important in your organization? And there's two facets of this question that I think are interesting to think about as you think about process automation. The first are the blue bars on the left, and those are really the bars that you would expect to see in response to a question like this. Reducing costs and improving the cycle time, reducing the time associated with a particular process. But I think the really interesting thing about this data point for me is when you look at those orange bars to the right, and even though they are less individually than the blue bars, collectively, in things like improving customer satisfaction, growing revenues, explore new markets, those are top-line items and top-line benefits to conduct process automation. And I think that point, that 55%, is really the most important takeaway from this data point. So one of the things that we decided to do with this survey is divide the universe into two groups. And the first group are people that have very little experience with a process automation project. And then the second group are ones that have some experience and in some instances a lot of experience. And so what we were trying to do there is understand that when you start a project, you have a different set of challenges than if you're an organization that has conducted a number of these projects. So the total universe that we sampled was 262. About 60% were these potential users, and about 40% were somewhat experienced users. So let's start with these potential users. And one of the things that we tried to do during the course of this report is think about and hold up as a model the typical life cycle of an intelligent information management project. And this isn't very complicated, but I think it is important because it highlights the different challenges that folks have depending on where they are in this life cycle. So the elements that we tried to cover are building the vision, identifying critical success factors, understanding what you have, inventorying capabilities and stakeholders, then building and identifying and prioritizing requirements, translating those requirements into a plan and executing, and then coming back and resetting and redoing once you have an implementation in place. And so what we tried to do in the course of this research is keep these 5 steps in our head and keep these center stage when we started thinking about people that haven't started versus those that are pretty well down the path. So this question, I think, for potential users only, we ask this, is what's keeping you from moving forward? And so when you think about this, the two things that pop up immediately, the orange bars on this chart, first of all, that these solutions are viewed to be too expensive, and that secondly, that they lack the right internal skills to proceed forward. And this is really a legacy, I think, of where technologies like ECM and BPM came from. They came from departmentally specific, mission critical, large organization, massive scale processes that required a lot of capability and a lot of horsepower, if you will, in order to get benefit from them. Well, where we are now is a lot of those technologies have changed. We talk about that in the context of content services versus ECM. And so I think the key here for many organizations is to look to buy these capabilities by the drink and look to simplify the approach that you take in order to drive adoption. This question, when we ask people when it comes to your involvement in process automation decisions, what's your biggest frustration? And this is really a hopping off point from the previous slide. And the things that people that are not successful yet with process automation are things like the IT area doesn't really understand business issues. There is so much scope creep associated with these projects that the business doesn't understand technology issues. And so these at the heart are alignment questions that frustrate people moving forward. And so when we thought about that, and then we thought about, okay, well, what suggestions could we make to help get started for organizations? And we put these 8 together. So the first one is identifying a cross-functional group to drive the initiative. Then really understand why you're doing it in the first place. Develop a strategy document that clearly outlines where you're going and get an executive sponsor to endorse that document. Then think about, okay, well, where do we want to start? Evaluate which processes are best suited for the initiative. Identify the roles and responsibilities that are required in order to change. Assess the current state of process targets and the supporting systems, and identify the expected benefits. These 8 steps, particularly getting those first couple in place, are really key to driving an effective automation project within your organization. So the second set that we talked to were experienced users. These are folks that are really pushing the envelope when it comes to AIIM technologies. And the importance there is to hold up a mirror for folks that are already invested in these technologies and give them some ideas about what they should do next, but also to hold up a mirror for people that haven't been down this path before in terms of really understanding what some of these capabilities are and what the lessons are that have been learned from industry leaders. So a key question is, where should you start your initiative? And so we asked experienced users, in which 3 departments do you have your most significant implementations? And this is with BPM, Business Process Management, RPA, Robotic Process Automation, and Case Management. And the common answer across all 3 is really interesting. It's finance, accounts payable, and invoice processing. And the reason this is interesting is for a couple of reasons. One is that these are a clear set of processes in which automation can yield very immediate financial results and cost savings. The second reason, though, is that finance, and particularly the CFO office, plays an increasingly important role in all sorts of other downstream processes, and in fact plays a key role in terms of driving digital transformation in organizations. And so if you're uncertain where to start, that's a really good place to find a business owner to start. And what have folks learned along the way? What lessons do experienced users have that could be relevant to prospective users that haven't gone down this path? And I think these orange bars are really revealing in terms of some of the challenges that folks have. And this says basically you have to watch out for risks that are tied to change management, that are tied to too many priorities, and that are tied to customization. And that really is interesting because it ties back, if you think about the slide on prospective users in terms of simplification and buying by the drink. All of that goes together in terms of adopting better strategies to deploying these technologies. And so when we distilled all of that and we thought about, well, what are the 6 things that potential users can learn from experienced users? And these are, I think, really kind of an action plan, if you will, for inexperienced users as they think about these technologies. First you have to set a stage. You have to go back and understand the basics associated with why you're doing it and what you're trying to do. You have to embed change management very early in your planning processes. You have to view these technologies not in isolation, but as complements to each other. I think a lot of people make the mistake that somehow think that RPA is a replacement for BPM. It's not. It's a complement. The two work in concert with each other. Fourth is select the right processes for greatest benefit. That goes back to that point about financial processes. Avoid single-purpose SaaS approaches. The reason is that while they can be very easy to deploy, take a single process, buy a SaaS solution, they can't be scaled across processes. And go back to that very first slide that we talked about in terms of the benefits of automation are dealing with customer journeys that transcend individual departments. And that's why you want to avoid single-purpose SaaS approaches. And then lastly, really think about this question of the digestion and ingestion of unstructured information. This is important in its own right, but it's especially important as you start to think about technologies like RPA, and as the RPA engines have to digest not only structured data, but also unstructured data. So the last thing that we wanted to explore in this report are links between process automation and transformation success. And so let me tell you a little bit about what we tried to do here is that we have a set of 10 digital transformation competencies, and 4 of these are directly related to process automation. And so we asked the folks in the survey to self-categorize, if you will, on a 100-point scale, their maturity relative to intelligent capture, customer journeys, robotic process automation, and agile development. And you can see, as you look through these metrics, that basically organizations are still at a fairly early stage in terms of taking these competencies, these core competencies that are necessary to digital transformation. And so the last thing that we wanted to cover, and it's kind of interesting, if you go back to that previous slide and think about those competencies, and what we did was took a look at the organizations in which all 4 of those competencies were above average. And then we said, okay, let's look at what they look like relative to digital transformation effectiveness and what they look like relative to overall organizational effectiveness. And you can see very clearly that the organizations who are more mature, who are above average on all 4 of those process competencies, tend to be about 25 points more effective when it comes to their digital transformation effectiveness and their overall organizational effectiveness. So process competency drives organizational and transformational effectiveness. So I'd like to really encourage you to download your free copy of the report. The URL is on the screen. It is free, and I think you'll find it pretty interesting. You'll also find some interesting insights in this report that we haven't done before, in which we asked 4 CIPs, Certified Information Professionals, to give their insights on some of the observations raised in the report. And I think you'll find those particularly revealing as you think about your own journeys down the path of process automation. This is John Mancini for Content Results on behalf of AIIM, and thank you for the time today. And make sure that you check out our underwriters of this research. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to offer this at no cost, and we do deeply appreciate their support. Thank you.